June 13th, it is Owning Your Fire, June 13th, 2018. And it's our last one before our summer break. Okay, we got about 2 more minutes, so let me know if you're having any problems hearing or anything. I'm at Judy's house because it's raining today, and I don't trust my internet when it rains. I'm in the country, and sometimes when it rains, the internet just decides to stop. This wall is actually red, but it looks really orange on the camera. Maybe I'll turn that light down a bit. No, that's a bit too much. To turn off my. Actually, I don't want to turn it off. I'll put it on airplane. That's what I'll do. Okay, are we all set? Oh, okay. Judy says not yet. She's the boss. Some are saying they have May on their screen. Let me go look at the website. Did I do it wrong? That says May. Okay. All right. So click the link that says Archive 2018. And then just go down until you get to June, because they're all there. Why isn't the June one live? Play, does it come up live? Yep, there you go. Okay. And where's the link? This is the embed URL. Okay. Copy. Okay. Can you hear what I'm saying, Judy? So if they click on the archive for 2018 and just go down to June and press play there, it'll work. I am in the process of changing it. What must have happened is I forgot to go change it. which is just hilarious. Pages. Because that'll just confuse people. Okay. Update. Okay, so if they update the page now, it should show the new. It should show June on the main viewing page. There, fixed. It's just probably they need to refresh again. If they're losing the comment box, it's just because I literally just did the update. I just hit update. So if you hit refresh, it'll just take a moment. Okay, it's coming together. Yes, because if they're on the archive page, the chat box probably doesn't show up. That makes sense. Okay, so go back to the private page to watch it live because I fixed the link now. And I will make a reminder for me to change it to, it'll be September. I'll do that next week because a lot of people will tune in. There. Okay. I am now reminded. Okay, is everybody good? Margot and Estrella are good. Is everybody else good? Yes, anybody who's coming in late, the page is fine because they'll see June because I fixed it. Okay. Coming in late, but actually exactly on time for things to be on the road. Okay. So last month we talked about the mom stuff and the pickled egg effect of the fact that when your mom is a fetus, your egg is in there and being affected by all of the things that go on for her in utero experience. And of course, that goes back through your genetic pathway. So after that, I thought, well, there has to be a dad equivalent. You know, it's not the same, but there's got to be imprinting stuff there. And so after, you know, lots of digging around and finding, so the primary thing that we need to pay attention to is authority of resources. So here's what I mean by that. Influence is what affects your decisions. So whenever you have a decision to make, there are all kinds of things that might influence you. The people you care about, your things you consider your responsibilities, your values, your budget, all sorts of things affect the choices you make. Okay, so influence affects your decisions. Status is a measure of influence. So how much something affects your decisions is how much status it has. So think about what are the things that have the most effect in your life. It could be your values, it could be your kids, it could be your career, it could be, it's whatever is important to you has more status. So, the weather might have a huge influence on your decisions, or it might have really no influence on your decisions. If it's severe weather, then it might have more influence on your decisions, right? So that affects things like, if your extended family member invited you for dinner, you might want to go or not want to go. If it was Christmas, you might feel more obliged to go. So there are all sorts of things that affect your choices. And the sort of pecking order of how important those things are can be affected by outside things like whether it's Christmas or how bad the weather is, stuff like that. There's also a what matters to you effect. So how much status you give something is how much it matters to you and your choices. Authority is status in a niche. So for instance, the school principal has a lot of status and a lot of authority at the school, not so much in the shopping mall. The police officer has a lot of status when he's in a speed trap. If you don't see him, not so much status, So authority is frequently delegated from things like structures, like the school system delegates authority to the principal, the legal system delegates authority to the police officer. You have to decide how much authority you delegate for anything. So for instance, you can decide you actually care about the police officer in the speed trap, where you say, well, I just don't care. I'm going to go where I'm going and I'll go as fast as I'm going. There can be consequences, but it's up to you how much status and how much authority you give these things. So the challenge is, how much authority do you have over your own resources? So I figured the easiest way to work on this and to see the effects of it would be to consider the resource of your own body, because it's a huge resource. How much authority do you have over your own body? Interesting question, hey? So we're going to explore some of that, and we're going to do some work. I want you to consider for a moment, just take some time and think about, what do you consider resources in your life? And do you feel ownership of them? So like, do you feel ownership of your own time? Do you feel like you have command of how you spend your time? And so an interesting thing about that is, like, sometimes there's the job, and you're earning money, so you've delegated authority to the job to say, this is what I do with my time while I'm working. But then there's consider your free time. Do you actually feel like you completely have the ability to choose to do whatever you want to do? And that's actually, like, it's a complicated one, because there's, you might think, well, but I still have to do laundry, and I still have to cook, and I still have to, whatever it is that you think you need to do. Does it feel like a choice, or does it feel like a requirement? Does it feel like an obligation? What does it feel like to you? Because the reality is, you do in fact have a choice. And you can say, well, if I don't do my laundry, I'm going to kind of stink, and that's gross. The thing is, it's your choice that you want a life where you're not stinky. It's your choice to decide that doing laundry has status for you. So it's a mental switch, right? Because it's really easy to think, well, I got to do laundry. Really, it is in fact a choice, but we're not used to thinking of it that way. So I want you to consider, what your resources are, and time is a huge one. Your body is a huge one. Your purse, do you feel like you own your purse? Do you feel like you own where you live? Do you own your home? And it's an interesting thing because, when I started thinking about this, it's like, I love my home. I love where I live, but I don't feel attached to it. So, I mean, if something changed and I had to leave there, I'd be disappointed, but I'm not going to die. So there's a positive to not being attached, but I think there's a gap. When I was looking at this, I felt like there's a gap with the ownership of this. So when I moved to this property, I spent quite a bit of energy, like kind of attaching my energy to the property and building the energy in the property. So it feels fabulous. But I don't necessarily feel the same kind of territory ownership that, for instance, that I know my husband feels, because he's a male. So he has that this is my land, that kind of thing. And I don't have that. So I thought, okay, is that a negative? Yeah, I mean, there's like everything has aspects. So I think it's a positive to not attach yourself. The thing is, it's a negative if you don't feel like you own something. If you don't feel like you own the resource, then how can you possibly have command of it? So this is something to ponder, and it's especially challenging as a female because we don't do territory well. We don't do territory well. And so think about the things that are your resources, whether you feel like you have ownership of those resources, and whether you feel like you have command of those resources. So I want you to consider if there's something that exists that is a resource that you actually do feel clearly that you own. It could be, this is my pillow, or this is my bed, or this is my kitchen, or this is my car. Like, just think, is there something that you know of that you actually feel like, this is mine, I own it, I control this resource? So Judy says, I feel like I own my car, but I let Conrad drive. That's okay, because that can be delegating authority. The question is it really clear that it's your choice? And that's the key, right? It's like doing the laundry. Do you feel like, nope, this is absolutely my choice. I do it because this is the life I choose for myself. I choose to have clean clothes. I choose to feel good about, how I smell, right? Are you aware of the choice, or are you defaulting to a set of requirements that you don't even know that you're imposing on yourself? Because the moment you fall into that requirement place, it's really easy to fall into freeze and hide. I was thinking about, because when I started looking at this authority of resources, I realized when we go to school, they put you in rows of desks and they basically say, sit down, shut up, move when we tell you to move, think what we tell you to think. And that's good. You're being a good girl when you do what we tell you to do, when you sit there like a little robot. And I got to tell you, it's not natural or normal for little kids to sit in little rows of desks. It's natural for them to be running around playing outside. So I was thinking about this and the energy, and it's like it makes really good peasants. Because if you've been trained since the time you were 4 or 5 years old to sit in a desk and think what people think you want you to think, and think that you're good if you do that, then it really sets you up for sitting in a cubicle, and doing the job that they tell you to do. Estrella asks, does it have to be an object? She feels like she owns her wisdom. So your wisdom is definitely a resource, and it's what I'm looking for is, do you have that feeling of ownership? Because I want to use that feeling of ownership to connect to other things. So if you can connect to that feeling of ownership, that'll do it. Margot says, I felt that I owned my townhouse, but it was badly influenced by neighbors. So I just bought a single home with more space. Good for you. So I have a zone of my space. And just realize that as you spoke. Yes, you see, you have to realize, right? Because I think so much of how we interact with the world is so programmed, and we have no idea how programmed it is. You know, you spend a lot of years sitting in a desk in a row with rules that were dictated. And if you think about it, like probably in kindergarten or somewhere in there, you got trained to sit in that desk in a row. At some point, it just became normal. You know, like there had to be a training point. And then once you were trained to sit in the desk in the row of, like you stop fighting it. And there's a point where, you know, if you think like, I don't know, think when you were 10, when you were 15, whatever, you would walk into the classroom and sit in the desk. It would never occur to you that you didn't want to do that. It would never occur to you that you'd rather be somewhere else. And even if you did think, I'd rather be somewhere else. And I mean, some people cut classes and stuff. I mean, you could have been one of those. But there's an awareness that if you're good, you'll sit in the desk and do what they tell you to do and think what they tell you to think. And you'll define that as right. And because you're a dependent child, even up until the high school, you know, you're a dependent child, there comes a point where you don't even consider that this is a questionable activity. You don't even consider that, you know, why am I doing this? Why am I sitting in this row of desks? Why am I here? Now, you might say, well, I hated school and I didn't want to go to school. Depending on the conflicts you had with your parents, that could have been a more active fight or a not more active fight. But was it that you had an awareness that you had a choice besides being in the desk, or were you trying to break free of the authority of your parents? Right? So there's a huge amount of conditioning there. And if you think like how many days were you in school for how many years, that's a lot of conditioning. I mean, there's also conditioning going on at home, because at home you're being taught, I don't know, don't swing from the chandeliers, go to bed at whatever time they want you to go to bed. Like there's a lot of rules and requirements that are being imposed on you that come from a different authority. Okay. And you know, like lots of parents have rules, and some parents are just like kind of basically don't bother me. So you may have had the kind of parents that are don't bother me, and then a perception that the requirements are not being imposed. But you know what the fact is? That even if you had the don't bother me parents, there were requirements with that, because whatever it was that you were supposed to be or do to not bother them, you knew what that was and you were doing it. You know, and you could say, well, no, I actually didn't do that. I caused all kinds of trouble. Well, that is how kids cry out for attention. So if you have the don't bother me parents and you're challenging that, you're looking for them to provide authority to make you feel safe, right? So I want you to consider, we have years and years and years of schooling where we were taught not to think about what we wanted, you know, not to think about what we wanted to figure out, you know, not to have original thoughts of our own, not even to have opinions because they told you what to think. And the pain of that for the child would have been so severe that the only way to cope was to kind of like numb yourself out and just kind of follow the rules in a mindless kind of way, because the alternative was more painful. You know, being the trouble child, like I think in, you know, grade 1 and 2, I spent most of my time in the principal's office, mostly because I wasn't paying attention. I went to a convent school. I remember the teacher hitting me on the head with a pen, and the nuns hitting me on my hands with the yardstick. And I used to get sent to the principal's office a lot. And I wasn't acting out. I just wasn't tuning in. So I look back at that and go, okay, so that was my coping mechanism. They were doing whatever they were doing. I was checking out to escape the fact that I was in pain, and then they'd hit me. And then they'd send me to the principal's office. So the bigger authority could give me a hard time. And I became much more well-behaved after, didn't take much of that before I, became a much more well-behaved kid, because they took away the coping mechanism, right? So we get turned into these little robots, and we learn to not have authority in our lives. And even in places where we think we're making decisions, are we actually making decisions, or are we following the constructs of our programming, right? And I mean, how can you know? Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. What I want to do tonight is look at how we grasp the authority of our resources, and we'll use our body. I mean, you could do this with lots of different things. And so the techniques we do tonight for the body work, you can use it for all the areas of authority in your life. We'll focus on the body work because everybody's got one. It's a way to aim to get the concepts, so then you can apply it other places when you want to. So is there something like Estrella's, wisdom, is there something you feel like you own that you do have authority for? And why I'm asking that is, can you connect with the feeling of, I own this, I have the authority? If you're not sure, if you don't feel like, well, I don't know, how do I know if I have authority? Then imagine. So you could say, well, okay, I could imagine that I have a candle and I have authority. I can light the candle or I can blow the candle out, and it's up to me to decide. I own the candle. I own whether it's lit or not. I choose if I light it. I choose if I blow it out. And I just want you to, if you have something in your life you feel like you own, cool. If you're not sure, then imagine that feeling of, I choose with the candle. I choose. I decide. I'm the only one who decides. Nobody else tells me what to do. Nobody else tells me when to do it. This is completely my decision. And you might say, well, it's still like, what if the kids and this and that? And, what if I have to go to work? I'm not going to leave a candle burning. I want you to back that up to, it's like doing the laundry. You decide if you want to be a person who wears clean clothes. Therefore, you decide if doing laundry is important to you. We get into the habit of doing it because you're a good girl and it's the right thing to do. And so we don't often embrace the fact that everything we do is a choice. We don't often embrace the fact that everything we do is a choice. And so that's, in fact, part of what we're doing here is saying, recognize everything you do is in fact a choice. And we're trying to escape from doing it automatically to be conscious of the choice. And that's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is being present in the moment and present with the fact that you're making choices in every moment. Margot asks, can it be my mind? It can if you feel like you truly own it. So you know that you have threat reactions, you have shot reactions. Do you feel like you command your mind? You probably don't. So I want you to think about the candle idea and see, can you feel like you can command whether this candle is lit or not? Can you say, this candle is mine, I own it, and I decide if it's lit or not? I decide if I'm going to light it. I decide if I'm going to blow it out. And I want you to just feel, what does that feel like? Notice if your head starts to come up with all kinds of reasons why that's not an okay thing to do. Like, oh, well, I have to go to work, so I can't leave the candle lit. That would be dangerous. So think about what it feels like. Think about what it feels like to know the candle's lit because you chose it. If you decide, I'm not going to light it when I go to work, that's your choice. You could, in fact, leave it lit. And if you say, well, I'd rather not risk having a fire, that's your choice. It's your choice still. So think about that feeling. It's my choice. Because we're going to use that feeling. So I want you to think about it and see, can you connect to it? Just gonna sit back out of the sun a little bit so I don't get glare. Okay. Okay. All right. So that's everybody's got it enough that we can work with it. That's good. And it's okay if you feel uncertain. Just keep thinking about that candle. I can light it. I can blow it out. I decide. It's mine. My resource. It's okay that it may feel like a small resource, although apparently they can see a lit candle from space. I think that's pretty cool. It's not about the size of the resource, it's about your authority over the resource. You choose. So what we want to think about here is, do you have authority over your own resources? Do you choose? Do you have authority over your own resources? Excuse me. Do you feel like you have command over your own resources? And there's probably lots of places where you think, well, this responsibility or that commitment or that value, back to the laundry thing. You choose. You're the one who decides that you want to be a person who has clean clothes. So you're the one who decides if you do laundry or not. It's about owning the fact that you're making a choice. It's about owning the fact that you delegated authority. And I think we're so conditioned to giving authority to others. If you think back to that years and years of sitting in a classroom, years of being a dependent child where your parents or whoever was your caregiver had authority over you, you're not used to having authority. Michelle asks, is command the same as authority? Not quite. So what I said is, influence is what affects your choices. Status is a measure of influence. So how much status has is how much it affects your choices. So how important something is to you is how much it affects your choices. And authority is status in a niche. So when it's authority about resources, it's authority that's specific to resources. So if you think, well, I mean, money is the most obvious one. Time is an important one. How you spend your time every moment of the day is where you give status. So if you spend time, making healthy food, then you give status to healthy food. If you spend time watching TV, then you give status to TV. If you spend time with people, then you give status to those people. Command is choosing the life you want and imposing that on reality. I'm wearing a shirt that Patricia O'Reilly gave me. I don't know if you can read this. No, because it ends up backwards. It says, I slam dunk my reality. That's what it says. I thought it was a perfect shirt for tonight. It says, I slam dunk my reality. So when we command, it's about manifesting. It's about saying, this is the way it's going to be, right? Allison says, I thought our country property was a great resource, but then the township said we couldn't put our trailer on it. And see, I think that's an absolute violation. And I think you needed a lawyer for that one. Because the township took authority over your property. And I mean, we have things like property tax, we have things like laws that have authority over our property. There's a point where, at what point do you fight? And at what point do you say this is not worth the fight? So I have to go somewhere else and get what I want. And this is always a challenge and a balance. The question is, do you feel like you have the right to fight? And you could say, well, I have the right to fight and I could fight. The price is too high. I want to do something different. It's understanding and feeling that you have the right to fight. That's the key. So it's like understanding and feeling I could do my laundry or not do my laundry. I'm the one who chooses to be a person who has clean clothes. I don't have to. I choose that. That's the feeling. So back to lighting the candle. I can choose to light the candle. I can choose to blow out the candle. It's up to me. I decide. So it's specifically, we're talking about authority of resources. So I said, last month we were doing all this mom stuff. Well, when I went looking to see what's the dad equivalent, this is where it came out, was in authority of resources. And it's the dad programs. And it's interesting because, your mom teaches you and imprints you with how the world will treat you. We've done a lot of work on that one to let that go so we can choose our experience. And dad teaches you how to be safe in the world. Well, they don't necessarily know so much about being safe in the world, our dads. And so having authority over your resources is a huge factor in being safe. If you feel like you have choices with your resources, then you have more choices. If you don't feel like you have any authority over your resources, how can you possibly feel safe? So it's a very interesting topic, and I feel like it's a complex topic. So let's go back to the body as a resource, because this is a place where, frankly, it's your body, you own it. You may not feel like that. And so an example of how you may not feel like that is you probably don't feel like you can do anything you want all day long. So if I decided, well, I want to take my body and, I don't know, lay it on the ground and just be there. You may not feel like you could do that, or it may feel weird to do that. I was I was driving in the car and I had CBC on, and this woman was on. They were talking to her. She was saying that sitting is the new sugar, and we should avoid sitting at all costs, and people should stand at their desks, and and she had this whole thing going on. And she said, I was standing in line at the bank and I felt tired and I didn't want to sit, so I lay on the floor, and then people were panicking, asking if I needed an ambulance. And she said, no, I'm just resting because the lineup was long. And I thought, that's a little bit dramatic, and I think that's a little bit of unnecessary drama. And and she objected to sitting as a form of poison or whatever. It's bad for you. But she didn't want to stay standing in the line either. So she made a big fuss and caused all kinds of ruckus in the bank. I think that's a lot of drama. But I thought she felt like it was her right to impose her choice on everybody around her. So that was interesting by itself. I think it was unnecessary drama, but it was interesting that she felt like, well, I feel like lying down on the floor in the bank, so that's what I'm going to do. I think it was a little egotistical, but like there's that part of me that's going, well, she felt entitled to do that, and she felt like it was her choice. And even if other people made a fuss, well, that was okay because she did what she wanted to do. I just pause and think for a minute. If you were in a lineup in a bank, would you be comfortable deciding you're just going to lie down on the floor and everybody could fuss as much as they wanted? I don't think I'd be comfortable with that. I don't think I want that kind of attention. I mean, doesn't mean I can't do it. I don't want the result from that. So it's an interesting thing to think about, because you get to think, well, okay, so then people are going to say, are you okay? Did you faint? Like, what's going on? Why are you down on the floor? Because that's peculiar behavior. If you just say, well, I just felt like lying on the floor, do you think you'd be okay with that? Imposing your choice on other people when they're uncomfortable. Just think about how that would feel. That'd feel pretty weird, wouldn't it? Mm. And we're taught to line up at the bank and be polite, just like we're taught to sit in our desk from the time we're in kindergarten. Now, like, does that mean I think you should cause chaos at the bank? I don't think that's useful. However, if we go back to the laundry decision, I wash my clothes because I don't want to stink. And that's my decision that I don't want to stink. If I go in the bank and line up, it's because I don't want to deal with the fuss. If I burged ahead of the lineup and got rude, I'm not sure anybody would actually do anything, right? They probably don't have guns because I'm in Canada. So the challenge then becomes, what is the effect I want to have? And that is the definition of responsibility. Choose your effect. So if I go in the bank and there's a lineup, I decide what effect I want to have. I can have the effect of lining up, or I can have the effect of barging to the front of the line. I could have the effect of leaving. It's up to me. I decide the effect I want to have. Margot says, I've sat on the floor in a long line quietly and not making a fuss. I wouldn't lie down. I just sat cross-legged, and I don't remember getting a reaction from others. Well, because you were clearly okay. You chose to sit. She chose to lie down, so everybody asked her if she was okay. They probably thought she was faint. Her drama. So this is it. You can choose to sit. It didn't make a fuss. You were clearly not in distress, and you were not doing something people considered disruptive. They considered her lying down disruptive. I'm not surprised. I'd be asking if she was okay too if some old lady was lying on the floor. So we choose our effect. That's responsibility. And our territory balances responsibility and resources. Our territory is defined by where we can impose our effect. So for instance, it's a lot easier for you to choose your effect inside your own home, because you can decide, what color you're going to paint your walls, or, what kind of floors you're going to have. You're going to decide where you put your furniture, that kind of thing. It's a lot easier for you to choose your effect inside your own home. It's not so easy once you step into a bank or, go out into the world, because now there are things like rows of desks and lineups that people expect you to comply to. And if you choose to confront those requirements, there's going to be consequences. So it's really easy for us to forget that a choice does in fact exist. If I go into the bank, it's up to me whether I line up or not. I don't have to. And I got to tell you, if it was a long lineup, I'd probably leave and come back at a different time, because I don't like long lineups. Most of the time, it's just a couple of people, and it's the easiest and quickest way to get done what I want to get done, to just be part of that lineup. I choose. I choose. My time is my resource. I choose if I'm going to spend it by standing in a lineup. I choose if I'd rather drive away and come back a different time. I choose. It's the awareness that I have the choice that's the important part. It's me balancing the price. Every choice has a price. Every choice. If I have tea or coffee, it's a choice that the price of the choice is that it eliminates the other choices. So if I have coffee, I've eliminated the choice of having tea. Even if I say, well, I could have coffee followed by tea, I still didn't have, the coffee I had still eliminated having the tea instead of the coffee. Even if I have it afterwards, that's a different choice. So my ability to choose needs to recognize the price. The price of every choice is the choices that are eliminated by making the choice. And the choice I make is determined by where I give status, where I give authority. So if I decide to have coffee, then I've given status to having coffee. I love coffee, but I drink decaf. So apparently the flavor of coffee and the ritual of having coffee is important to me because I have coffee most mornings. I give it status. I spend my time on it. I spend my money on it. Um, I spend my attention on it. Like I get up in the morning thinking, I want coffee. That gives it a lot of status. And so it's having an awareness. So pause a moment and consider, what do you think of as your resources? So you have your time, your health, your ability to reason, uh, what property you own, things you have, people in your life. Like all of these things are resources. So pause and think, what do you consider a resource? Now think for each of those things what the price is. What is the price of having that resource? My husband's out of town, so I had to organize my sons to come out and mow the lawn because I have 1.7 acres. I'm not doing that. So they're coming, and I mean, they'll do it. It's not a problem. I still had to organize it because usually Wayne's there and he just does it and I'm oblivious. It's a price I pay for having that much grass. All of the resources have a price. What is the price of the resource? Every person in your life, it has prices. Everything you own has a price. If nothing, it takes up your space. Things have to be dusted, whatever. There is a price. Even if it's taking up your mental geography, it has a price. Yeah, and an emotional price often. Okay, so let's go back to the feeling of being able to choose whether you light the candle or blow out the candle. That feeling of, I own this, I decide. I have authority over whether this candle is lit or not. I have authority over where I put the candle. I have authority over whether the candle is lit or whether I blow it out. Think about this. Think about the feeling. I choose whether I light this candle or not. I choose if I blow it out. And now I want you to imagine, what would it be like if you had that same clear-cut choice over the state of your body? Yeah, it's a different kind of feeling, isn't it? So I've been thinking since I moved to the country, I should be doing yoga on my own. I love yoga. I love it. But I've always done it in a class because it's easier. So I found some stuff on YouTube, and there's, perfectly good classes and stuff you can do on YouTube for free. And I said, well, I'll just do it here. And I have my mat, I have my stuff. And then I just didn't do it. And even though I like yoga and I want to do it, I wasn't doing it. So I was thinking about that one day and I realized, okay, so I've made this into an unmeetable requirement because I'm not doing it for whatever reason. And I'm thinking I should do it. And the minute you do that, you've got an unmeetable requirement. And I'm putting myself in freeze and hide. And I thought, what the hell am I doing that for? And it's interesting because we have all of these places that we put ourselves in freeze and hide with unmeetable requirements that it's such a habit that you don't even realize you're doing it to yourself. I caught myself, which was good. So I said, okay, so I have to let go of this whole idea that I want to do yoga or I should do yoga or any of that. That's all got to go. That's just crap. Let that go. I'm not doing that. I might never do yoga again, and that's okay. I might do it. I might not do it. The fact is, I'm not doing it, and I'm not going to should myself because that turns it into freeze and hide. So I gave that up, let that go. And I realized so much of how we think about our body is set up to be unmeetable requirements. It's amazing. We have things about, what I should eat or what I shouldn't eat or what I should do in terms of activity and what I shouldn't do and what your body should look like or what it shouldn't look like or what you should wear and what you shouldn't wear. It's just like it's your body is just this treasure trove of unmeetable requirements that you can use to put yourself in freeze and hide. Because how else were you going to cope with years and years of sitting in a desk in a row in a classroom where you didn't want to be, probably surrounded by people you didn't want to be with, doing things you didn't want to do? It is we are so conditioned. And how many shoulds do you think were built? How many shoulds were built into keeping yourself in that desk day after day, year after year? You should sit still. You should be in school. You should have good marks. You should be a good girl. How many shoulds are there? And how much did your body scream because you sat in that chair and did what you were told? How programmed are we to hurt ourselves, to hurt our bodies? How programmed are we to be a good girl and to do all the shoulds? And then how programmed are we to have a ream of shoulds to beat ourselves with because that's our comfort zone? Yeah, wow, right? Just wow. There's kind of a lot. There's kind of a lot. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Go back to that feeling of I can light the candle or I can blow the candle out. I choose. I decide. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use cell breathing and we're going to breathe that into our bodies. So you can either start with one cell or you can do all the cells at once. But picture one cell and imagine as you breathe in, you breathe into the light. First, we're just going to do the cell breathing. As you breathe in, you breathe into that spark of light. That's the life force at the center of the cell. Breathe into the light. As you breathe out, that light expands with a flush. As you breathe in, you breathe into the spark of light at the center of the cell. As you breathe out, that light expands and flushes. Now, feel. I choose. I choose whether I light the candle. I choose if I blow it out. As you breathe in, I choose. And as you breathe out, flush. As you breathe in, I choose. As you breathe out, flush out anything that interferes with I choose and allow that I choose to expand outward through the cell, through your energy, through the rest of your body, out into the world. And now get all of your cells. As you breathe into the light. As you breathe out, flush. As you breathe in, I choose. I choose. As you breathe out, flush anything that interferes with I choose. As you breathe out, flow I choose out with the light through yourself, through your energy, through all of your being, out into the world. As you breathe in, I choose. As you breathe out, I choose. We're going to sit with that for a minute. Let us breathe that I choose. Just let it keep flowing. And yes, we're going to do more things with it. I choose. Breathe it in, breathe it out. And just think about letting it go to all of the cells. Think about breathing into your bones. I choose and flush, breathing it into your joints. Pay attention to your organs. Pay attention to your glands. Breathe into the cells of your brain. Breathe into the cells of your spine. Do your nose and your toes. Do your ears and your rear. Do your orifices. You have lots of orifices. I choose. Okay. Now, here's what we're going to do. Just let that breathing keep going, and I'm going to talk about this for a little bit, and then we're going to walk through it. So, most of you will remember doing the cell breathing exercise where you learn about shielding, where I bring people into the room and you watch how the cell behaves, and then you put the shielding in place to make the cell strong again. So we're actually going to do this with I Choose, and I'm going to bring authority figures into the room so you can watch how your capacity to choose responds to that. And it's in your body. When we do the cell breathing and you see the reaction of the cell, it's all about like, that's my body having that reaction. Okay. So we're going to walk through bringing in authority figures. First, just allow yourself to know what's going on, like, and how your body is responding to this, because we so want to believe it's how we think, and it so isn't. It so isn't what we think. Okay, so doing this will help you be aware, and then you can use this I choose energy to flush that out, to flush that reaction out, to retrain your body. Now, we're going to do this once. Obviously, you may have to do it more times because, like, you spent a lot of years being conditioned. Okay. And it's okay for it to take more than once to make a transition. You're going to make huge progress tonight because you're making a change. And it's totally appropriate to kind of be patient with yourself, to let yourself take that change in steps, because there's no need to get sick. And I got to tell you, for your limbic system, all change is a threat. And if it wants to slow you down, the easiest way to do it is to knock you over. So it's more loving. It's more loving for you with yourself to say, I'll do this in steps. If you try to beat yourself into submission, that's not loving. It really isn't. And always remember, your limbic system really does believe it's protecting you from change. So part of the challenge here is to say, okay, I can do this with love. I can do this with love. So think about I choose, and think about I choose with love. Because you can say, well, I choose, damn it, and everybody is going to live with that. Or you can say, you know what? I choose and I love. So what if I choose is an expression of your being? It's an expression of the love you are. So let's play with that for a little bit. Wow, that sure got a lot of reactions. Okay. So go back to the cell breathing. I choose. Breathing in, I choose. Flushing out with I choose. And think about whether you can feel I choose as a loving expression of your being. So, okay, so for some of you, just thinking about it that way makes it okay. And for some of you, it's like, oh, hell no. If I'm choosing, then there's going to be a fight. Okay. What if that's just not true? What if that's just not true? Okay. So it's absolutely true that your choice is imposing on the world. Okay. And it's absolutely true that there's probably people who don't like your choice. But what if you don't like, what if that's not a problem for you? What if you don't need people to be in conflict with you? Now, the fun thing about conflict is you need to be safe with conflict to not have it. And you can't pretend. It doesn't work that way. Like you say, oh, no, I'm fine with the conflict. I don't need it. That's not how it works. You actually have to feel safe with conflict in order to not need it in your life. So the easiest way to do that is with glide. We've talked about that before. So glide is, it doesn't need to be a fight. It doesn't need to frighten people. It can simply be what you choose with love. The glide story started when I went to Hawaii. So I have a friend who's extremely clairvoyant. She has been for years. She's one of these people that says, oh, we're not getting on this elevator, and then that elevator breaks. She's one of those people. And so when I was planning my trip to Hawaii, she said, in a totally different context of conversation, she said, oh, you know those emergency route signs that are all over the place now? Did you notice those? I said, yeah. And she said, do you suppose they have those in Hawaii? I said, I don't know, probably because, there's water there. So if there was a high tide, like a tsunami or something, they'd have to have emergency detour routes. And she said, well, do me a favor when you get there, notice the signs. And I said, okay. I said, is there something I need to be worried about? She said, no, just notice. Just do me a favor, notice. Okay, fine. Okay, so when I got there, I paid attention to the emergency detour routes because it's not something I typically pay attention to. And sure enough, while we were there was a tsunami. Okay, they hadn't had one in 50 years. They managed to have one while I was there. Now, the fun and exciting part was we got evacuated from the hotel because, of course, the hotel was right on the water. Got evacuated from the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning. Right? Had to get in they were loading people on buses. We had a rental car, so we got in the rental car, and I said, well, where do we go? And they said, up, because all of the Hawaiian Islands are a cone, right? So if you go up, you're just away from the water. All right. So we found the Walmart. We ended up in the Walmart parking lot with very little gas, but it was fine. And so then we turned on the radio and we're listening. And the guys on the radio were saying, oh, and this happened, and back 50 years ago when it happened, all these buildings got wiped out. And I'm thinking it's going to be bad if the airport gets wiped out because it's right. Everything in Hawaii was right on the coast because it's a cone, right? And so they watched the water suck out of the harbor, and there was crabs and stuff left behind because the water got sucked out of the harbor. And they were expecting this big wall of water to come back, and it didn't. It ended up trickling back. And this really was anticlimactic to the guys who were on the radio doing all the buildup for this. And all day they were talking about how the various islands coming up the Pacific, they'd had 9-foot waves and they'd had 12-foot waves. And then the fun part is the islands that were past Hawaii had 9-foot waves as well. So they had these big, huge tsunami waves, and then Hawaii didn't. And then the other ones had big waves. So when I called my girlfriend and said, well, that was interesting. And she said, well, I just decided that you had to have dry underwear. And I said, okay. And she said, well, because here's the thing, there's all this attention that's happening. There's, millions of people that are involved in this big, weather pattern or whatever it is that causes tsunami. So she said, you don't want to be up against that. You're not going to try and change something like that. That would be crazy. because there's just too much. It's you against the avalanche kind of thing. So she said, I just thought, well, how can I glide so that I'm not confronting all of those people who expect the tsunami, all the people who are expecting tragedies or expecting buildings to be wiped out. She said, I just started thinking, well, Trish just needs to have dry underwear. And that's all I focused on, she said. And sure enough. Now, the fun and sort of embarrassing part about this is that when the alarms went off in the hotel, it was kind of startling. All of a sudden, there's this big alarm, and I thought it was a fire alarm or something. And then the people in the halls were saying, "No, it's a tsunami, so we have to vacate." I don't know. Like, does this mean there's a crashing wall of water coming at us now? So I got up, I threw on the sundress that I'd had that day. We grabbed our, my purse and stuff like that. I left the suitcases because who cares? Ran out the door. I wasn't wearing underwear. So fortunately, energy works by intent. It works by intent. So the point was, she decided that my underwear was going to be dry. So the intent worked just fine. Walmart sells underwear, so it was all good. Nobody else knew. I mean, I just told you guys, but basically nobody knew that I wasn't wearing underwear. They couldn't, well, there was no strong breeze, thank God. I'm at Judy, so I could hear Judy cracking up laughing at me. I hope you guys are having an entertainment too. But that's glide. That's the concept of glide. Like, if you try to stop a tsunami, that's you versus nature. That doesn't even make sense. If you try to stop something that a large number of people have an opinion on, it's like you trying to stop a tsunami. It doesn't make sense. So you have to think, well, what do I actually need? And she decided what I needed was dry underwear, and that would solve everything. And she's right. It solved everything. I was fine. That's a really cool concept. Now, a lot of times when we're caught up with things, it's really hard to imagine what's the equivalent of dry underwear. So if you think like, Trump is a great example. There's a lot of drama and stuff going on around Trump. And so what I just think about is, how do I want my life to be? How do I want my life to be? What do I want to feel on a day-to-day basis? And I don't worry about whether Trump is in office. I don't worry about what bullshit he's getting up to. I just decide this is how I want it to be, because that's my equivalent of dry underwear. This is my life. This is how I choose to experience it. And the universe will sort out whatever it needs to sort out so that it's that way. That's what command is. Command is, I choose my life. I command it into being. My life's pretty darn good. A bunch of people said to me a couple of years ago, they said, I can't believe you're going down to the States, because, I go down in the winter. I can't believe you're going down there now that Trump's being elected. I'm not. I don't need any problems with that. Then we're in a park. We're kind of isolated. Life's pretty good. Like, it's been fine, thanks. I don't need that drama. If I feel like it's different than that, then I'll go to Mexico or something. I have friends in Mexico. It's wonderful. If I feel like it's not right, then I have choices. It's up to me to choose. Okay? So here's the thing. Your choice does not have to impose on anybody else. If people need to have a miserable life because of Trump, they can go ahead and do that. I don't need to. I don't need to. I remember, God, it must be 10 years ago now, there was this huge ice storm in Ottawa, and people lost all kinds of power. And so I watched it on TV. We had 2 brownouts. We never actually lost power at all, ever. We were in Canada at the time. My neighbors, some of my neighbors lost power for 3 days. 3 days. And the woman next door to us lost power. We had an extension cord going from our house to her house. And it was winter. There was ice all over the place. She had no power for 3 days. I never lost power. And it was kind of weird because we boiled a lot of kettles for people. We did a lot of, helping out the neighbors and stuff. But like, they're looking at our house and it's all lit up like a Christmas tree, and they're sitting in the dark going, why is this? Why do you have power? I'm on the corner. That was our story. We're on the corner. Maybe the lines join here or something. I don't know. Because you need a story for people so they don't burn you at stake. Stories are useful, choose your effect. I didn't need it. I watched it on TV. I didn't need that. I didn't need to have the airport be taken out in Hawaii. I didn't need to have a problem when I went to the States. However, it wouldn't be strategic to confront. You don't need to confront a million people who want something else. You don't have authority over their resources. You don't have authority over their choices. You have authority over your own. Okay, so now let's go back to paying attention to your breath. I choose. Breathing into the cells. Every cell, breathe into the light. I choose. And as you breathe out, flush anything that interferes with I choose. And now check and see, does it feel safe to feel that as love? Because here's the thing. That's the deal. I don't need to tell them what to do. I choose for me. And that's what unconditional love is. You do whatever you need to do. I'll have dry underwear and I'll be fine, thanks. It can be challenging when people are in your life and you feel like their choices are imposing on you, and it can be a challenge. Our kids especially like to show us, and our spouses like to show us how much status they have in our lives. And then it's about deciding to step back from the drama. Estrella says, that's how I am with mosquitoes on the sports field. Other parents are swatting themselves all night. Yeah, see, I still have trouble with mosquitoes, and I think it's because I want permission to go in because I don't want to be out there. And so I have to figure out what's the right story that allows me to go in so I don't need to have the mosquito issue. I'll think about that. And then see, sometimes they just don't bother me. Of course, I have a gazebo, so I could just sit in the gazebo. But you're doing exactly that thing. The mosquitoes are not bothering you. That's the dry underwear thing. You do whatever you need to do, and I'll do what I need to do. And they don't need to know you're doing something different because that can cause you problems. So you just need a story, right? Okay. See, that's it. That's better. So I choose. I choose is love because it frees them to make their own choice. I choose is love. Breathing it in, breathing it out into the world. It is especially when you breathe it out into the world because you're saying you're free to do what you need to do, whatever you want. Excuse me, whatever you need to do, that's yours. I choose, and you don't have to impose it, right? Now, the fun part is you are imposing it. You have to impose it to bring your choice into being. It's it's not an attack. You're not imposing it on them, you're imposing it on your reality. You're not imposing it on them, you're imposing it on your reality. And they choose how they interact with that. So that's the command piece is I impose it on my reality. The love piece is, and they can do what they choose. They have a choice too. That's it. I choose. I choose. It's challenging to integrate this thinking because all those years of sitting in rows of desks, all those years of being conditioned by your parents to conform to social programming, all of those years say it has to be okay with everybody else. And I have to do the same thing as everybody else and I have to think like them. And that's not true. But there's a lot of conditioning. So that's what we're flushing. I choose. Breathe it into the light. I choose. Flush out. Flush out whatever needs to go. Flush I choose out into the world with love. I choose loving inward. I choose loving outward. I choose loving inward. I choose loving outward. That's better. That feels so much better. Okay, good. Let's give that a minute to just breathe with that. it occurs to me with the mosquitoes on the sports field is that they need to be miserable to give more status to their sacrifice. So they're there on the sports field with their kids. If they're miserable on the sports field, then it's a bigger sacrifice. They get more status. That's why they need to be eaten by the mosquitoes. That's it. Okay. So that's good. Okay, so now we're going to try bringing in the authority figures. So we're going to relax the I choose breathing, then bring in a figure so you can see how they react. And then we're going to restore the I choose thinking so you can flush out that programming. Allison asks, will this work with eliminating negative drama in my household? It depends on whether you're willing to impose that or not. So it worked in my house. People like their drama. It's what you can do is you can have it not affect you. So Nicholas tried to pull this on me Tuesday. I think it was, yeah, because it was yesterday. So he said, oh, my prescription ran out and I have the flu and I can't get this to happen and I can't get that to happen. And I said, okay, I can help with this. So I did a couple of phone calls. I got everything sorted out. I said, there, it's all sorted out. You can go pick it up. And he said, well, now I have friends over. And I thought, you little shit. There you were all in this big panic and overwhelmed, and I helped you with this. And now you have friends over? I said, fine. All right, I'm done. I did what I needed to do to help. There were reasons that I felt like that was the right thing to do. But then once he said that, I was like, all right, I'm done. And then, so then today I said, did you get your prescription? And he said, well, I didn't get it yesterday. And I said, if I went through all those hoops to get this for you and you don't go pick it up, I'm going to be pissed. And he said, all right, I'll go pick it up. But, I'm going to do that. And then I got a text message saying, I just got a call from the pharmacy saying the prescription is ready. Like just that minute. I thought, see, that's perfect. It's perfect. I don't need the drama. I don't need this. So it's like, there's an example of he was trying to rope me into his drama. I did exactly what I felt was appropriate for me to do. And then I'm done. You want to continue the drama? I'm done. I've done what I needed. I've done what I've needed to do to satisfy me. And then I'm done. So that's the challenge. It's to figure out, what do you need to do to satisfy you, and where's the place where you let go? And the challenge is to be able to let go. A huge part of what gives me permission to let go is that I recognize the piece I need to do for me to feel good about me. It is a challenge with people you care about because they like their drama. They really do. That's funny. So this reminds me, all these things clicking together. So when Nicholas was, I don't know, 6 or something, he was in soccer and he didn't want to run around on the sports field. So he'd get out in the middle of the field and he would lie down in the middle of the field, just like the woman in the bank. Okay. Lie down in the middle of the field. And then basically they'd have to get him off the field. So they'd put a sub in. That was his way of saying, you can't make me do this. And he was right. They couldn't make him do that. And he was totally comfortable imposing his will. Now, did he make a conflict out of it? Absolutely, he made a conflict out of it, but he was comfortable doing that because, it's not like he was going to get hurt. I guess somebody could trip over him. Basically, they got him out of there pretty quick as soon as he started doing that. And it was a very clear message that, this isn't going to work as a gross. Like my goal for having him in soccer was to wear him out so he'd go to bed. That was my only goal. I really just, so clearly we needed a sport that he was more engaged in. Soccer wasn't doing it. But it's just interesting to watch because there's the, did I want to be on the side of the field watching him run up and down? Not really, not particularly. I wanted him worn out, so we had to find something that worked for that. Swimming worked for that. So, hey, so we got him in swimming. I didn't need him to be in soccer. I needed him to be tired so that so he didn't wear me out. right? So there's your challenge. It's about what's actually going on here, right? And I remember somebody saying to me, like, don't you think you should make him play because he made the commitment? He's 6. He's 6. He didn't make a commitment to anything, right? And at that point, it would be bad enough that he's stuck in a desk in school all day. And I considered that absolutely inappropriate. I think at this point in time, I'd handled that differently. At the time when he was 6, I mean, this was before I knew about energy. I didn't think it was I certainly didn't want to homeschool him. So, I mean, maybe that was the trade-off I made. You're going to school and you're going to sit in the desk because I'm not going to homeschool you. I'm not doing that. Maybe that was my trade-off. Maybe that was the price. And he had to figure out how to deal with it. So he did, you know. So let's go back to put the breath in place. And what we're going to do is have the breath, then we're going to just go to regular breathing, bring in an authority figure so you can see the reaction. Then we're going to put the I choose with love breath back in place. So let's focus on the breath, breathing in, I choose with love, flushing out, I choose with love. Okay, and then relax the I choose breathing and just have regular breathing. And just do a kind of a either take the one cell so you can watch it, because that's the easiest way to see it is to watch the one cell, because whatever reaction your cell has, your whole body will react. If you're not comfortable watching the whole cell, you can do like an inventory of your body to see where the reaction occurs. But I got to tell you, you'll see it differently if you watch it through the cell. It's up to you. So regular breathing, and then now let's have your father step into the room, and he's just standing there. It's not necessary for him to do anything. And just watch how that cell behaves. Okay, and now let's put the I choose with love breathing in place while your father's still in the room. I choose breathing into the light. I choose flushing out. And just watch. Is the cell behaving differently? Is your body behaving differently? Do you feel differently? Okay, now let's let your father go. And just stay with the I choose breathing, because having him go is another effect. That's it. That's it. Just let things stabilize. That's it. There are important realizations here. And then there's recognizing that you have the ability to change this. Because part of it is recognizing, oh, yeah, look, there's a whole bunch of reactions here I didn't even know were going on. And then there's allowing yourself to have authority in your life, in this resource of your body. And allowing yourself to take that authority is changing your reactions. Allison says, when my father appeared, I wanted to ask him, what do you want from me? Isn't that a perfect example of how programmed you are to comply? And so now I choose. Breathing in, I choose. Let it flush out. And see, as you allow that to flush out, can you come to the place of saying, what do I want? And it's interesting because if you can acknowledge what you want from that relationship, whether or not your father is capable of providing it is a totally different thing. And in fact, it's more important to understand what you feel like you want or need, and then to let him go from that, and then go inside and give it to you. And you would do that in campfire with your child selves, because what he then becomes is the placeholder of where you're holding a piece of pain. It's not about him because you're an adult now. Inside you, all of the child selves may still want something from him or feel like they're needing something, and you need to be the source of it, because most people can't be, he probably can't be. So this then becomes an opportunity for you to discover a way to heal yourself. Are you willing to let go of being in seek of pleasing your father? Because when you think, I want to ask him, what do you want from me? That's, I want to please him. I want to gain his approval. Are you willing to let that go? You can still love your father. You can still care about his opinion. It's the same as the laundry. It's about recognizing, I choose to do laundry because I prefer to wear clean clothes. I don't have to. I choose. And so you can choose how you interact with your father or the memory of your father. Say, I choose how I feel about the interaction. I decide. Breathe, I choose with love into the light in every cell in your body. As you breathe out, I choose with love, flushes out through your cells, through your energy, through all of your being into the world. I choose. Allison says, yes, I always wanted his approval, but never got it. So you are taught to be in seek for approval. You've been conditioned in that your entire life. And so the people around you will fulfill that program for you and make you feel like you could never get approval. Are you willing to let that go? I choose. That's it. Flush it out. Allison says she wants to. And so years and years of conditioning, do it one step at a time. So maybe once a day, do this I choose breathing and say, you know what? I want to let that go. I want to let go of seeking approval and change it to strategically choosing my effect. Because if you kind of go through life with a screw you to everybody, that won't necessarily get the effect that you want. So choose your effect, let go of seeking approval, and just kind of do a couple of breaths a day saying, this is what I'm letting go. I'm flushing that out, and let it change in its own time. Be patient with yourself. It's a lot of years of conditioning. That's it. That's it. Okay, so now relax to regular breathing. And now let's have mom step into the room and pay attention to the cell, see how it reacts. Pay attention to your body, pay attention to how you feel. Just let yourself be aware. And now let's do the I choose with love, breathing in to every cell. I choose with love, breathing in to the light. And then as you breathe out, flushing it out through your energy, through your cells, through all of your being out into the world. And see how that changes. Or feel how it changes, or allow it to change. Let's just be with that for a moment. Okay, now let's let mom leave and focus on the I choose breathing, because this will have its own effect. That's it. There's a lot of information happening there. And recognize that we're so conditioned to give authority to others, to not have authority. And even in places in our life where we feel like we do have authority, we're not conditioned to have authority for ourselves, for our resources. So you could say, well, in my kitchen, I'm the boss, or at work, I'm the boss, or, wherever you think that you have authority, it's an authority, a status in a niche. So you can have all kinds of authority in a specific niche and not necessarily feel like you have authority of yourself or your life. How much status do you give to you? How much is what you want important compared to what other people want or what other people demand? That's it. I choose. Okay. Now let's relax back to regular breathing and just stay with that for a moment. Kind of get into that vibe. That's it. Okay, so now let's have a figure that represents a teacher. It could be a specific teacher that you remember. It could just be the teacher. What I want is the figure that has the authority to make you sit in that desk. For all of the years that you were in school, the sit in the desk, that this is what a good girl is, all requirements that you didn't even know that you were imposing on yourself, coping that you didn't even know was being triggered, damage, that like having a child's body sit in a desk like that for hours at a time, that's not okay. But you didn't even know. Like, it's not like you sat there and said, "Oh my God, my ass hurts," or "Oh my God, my knees are stiff." Like, it's not, you don't think like that because you're busy trying to cope with the fact that you're in pain and hide it from yourself because it's too difficult. So have that figure of the teacher, recognize how the cell responds. There's a lot of information in how the cell responds. Then notice how your body responds, notice how you feel. That's it. Now, let's do the I choose breathing. I choose with love. Breathe it into every cell in your body. And as you breathe out, flush. Breathe it into every cell in your body as you choose it. As you breathe out, flush. I choose. What you're doing is you're releasing all the programs about this authority so you can take your own authority with your life, with your choices. There's stuff here you don't even know that's rooted in this crap. So let the energy do the work. I choose with love. And then flushing out all of that stuff that gave away authority, flushing out all of that stuff that disconnected you from knowing what you wanted and what you were feeling. And I mean, this is not wrong. It was the only way you had to deal with what was going on back then. That's it. And now you can take authority because you are an adult. You're no longer a dependent child. Flush these programs away from you. Flush the pain. Flush the trauma. Flush it all out. I choose. And flushing. I choose with love. That's it. And just let that breathe for a while. And you're going to do as much as you're willing and able to do for now. And it's okay to go back because if you push too hard, you'll just upset your limbic system. So patience with yourself, peace with yourself. It's important to recognize, like, this is a lot. Hey, we're doing the deep stuff. We do the deep stuff. That's it. I choose with love. That's it. Okay, now have that teacher figure leave and keep the I choose breathing because that has its own effect. And a lot of this programming, integrate it into yourself because, like I said, there's a point where the teacher doesn't have to tell you to sit in the desk and shut up because you just do it on automatic because you've been conditioned. So let the I choose breathing flush out all of the stuff that you integrated to allow you to choose, to allow you to recognize that you're making a choice, like doing the laundry or lighting the candle. It's your choice. You can choose your effect. You can recognize a choice actually exists. That's it. That's it. Okay. Okay. So now let's relax to regular breathing. Yes, I know there's more to do with that one. We're going to do a layer at a time. And that you have recordings. You can go back and do this again. For now, let's just relax back into regular breathing and just stay with that for a little bit to give your body a little bit of a rest. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of information, I know. The best part about the recording is you get to a place like this where there's so much churning around and you can just press pause or stop and just sit with it and let yourself breathe and just process what's going on. That's it. Okay. So now let's have a figure come into the room that represents good girl, the authority for good girl. And so this could be a conglomeration of authority figures of all kinds. It could be the social authority that says what a good girl is, because a good girl sits in the desk and a good girl doesn't stink, you know, all of those things. A good girl complies. So let's have that authority. And so now pay attention to the cell first. There's a lot of information. Notice how the cell responds. A good girl is abused. That's a fact. Because abuse is when someone puts your values in conflict. And it would not feel right to sit in that desk all day long. So fundamentally, a good girl is abused. And there are lots of other places where that applies. And for a lot of people who are abusers, the message they give you is that if you're a good girl, you put up with this. You take it in all the forms that it can occur. So pay attention to the cell, pay attention to your body, notice, because we're specifically focusing on authority of resources. You can do this exercise with all kinds of things. For now, pay attention to how what the authorities taught you about being a good girl and taught you about conforming to that, what it did about your ability to have authority over your body, over your time, over your choices, your authority of resources. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a hell of a lot, isn't it? Okay, so let's do the breathing. I choose with love. And breathing in, and as you breathe out, flush. There's lots to flush. Let's take our time, be gentle. And remember, you don't have to get rid of it all at once. I know you'd like to because you feel it and you go, oh my God, I want all that gone now. Be patient with yourself. It's I choose with love. And it's let yourself love you too, to recognize you didn't do anything wrong. This is not wrong. You coped the best you could. And now what you're doing is allowing yourself to release those wounds and release that conditioning so you have the ability to choose. What you did was right for protecting you when you were a dependent child. What you did was right for protecting you. And so now you have an ability to make a different decision. You have the authority to decide who you choose to be. You have the authority to define you. And if you want to stink, you go right ahead. It's up to you to decide what you want. I'd prefer not to stink, frankly. The thing is, I have the right to decide that. Allison says, this figure drained my energy. Yes, no shit. I bet you it did. I think it drained everybody's energy, frankly. because this is the voice that says you can't be who you are. You're not supposed to lie on the floor in a bank. You're not supposed to stink. You're not supposed to get up from your desk. And you're so conditioned. And so now what we're doing is we're taking that I choose energy and we're flushing out. We're flushing out the trauma. We're flushing out the conditioning. We're flushing out all of the things that you came to believe because of that conditioning and because of that just sheer coping. And it's allowing room so you can say, this is who I want to be. This is who I choose to be. This is the effect I want to have. And, it doesn't mean that you have to wear a leather jacket. Like, this is not about becoming rebel, because rebel is its own form of self-destruct. I'm still going to do my laundry and wear clean clothes. This is about doing it because I choose it, not because somebody told me this is how I'm a good girl. This is about me deciding this is the person I want to be. This is the person I choose to be because I have authority over me. I have authority in my life. I give me the status to make choices for me. That's it. Breathing in, I choose with love. As you breathe out, flush. There's a lot of jaw stuff. And I think, it's interesting because when I was working on this, I realized like, oh, wow, that's a lot of jaw stuff. And what I realized was probably when I was that little kid stuck in that chair, I was probably clenching my jaw and grinding my teeth because there would have been a lot of suppressed aggression and stuff. And I don't remember grinding my teeth when I was 6, but I bet you I was. So there was a lot that had to come out through my teeth and through all this bone and stuff. Think about whether you had fidgets when you were a little kid and you were trying to stay sane in school. Did you doodle? Did you pick at your nails? Did you bite your nails? There were probably fidgets that were part of your coping mechanism, and a lot of them were probably called wrong. And so those would have been ways that you were desperately trying to cope, like to comfort yourself and to cope with being stuck like a prisoner, locked into a chair. So think about flushing all those fidgets and flushing all the pain that's anchored by those fidgets. Wow, there's a lot. Gently, gently, gently. Gently, gently. So if you're having that feeling of like, oh my God, this is going to take the rest of my life, it won't, because energy is all about aim. So when we do work like this, basically what happens is I go poking around in something and I go, oh, look, there's this whole chunk of stuff that is a different angle that we haven't cleared yet. And I come and I tell you about it and you go, oh my God, that's a mess. It's okay. Because the moment you start to recognize it is the moment you start to change your mind, right? Judy says it almost feels like it's being torn out of me. So gently. That's probably why I keep having to say gently. It's okay to let it go. It's okay to grieve it too. Because a chunk of this formed your self-image. So that kid you were when you were 6, you had a self-image then. And who you are now has that as part of the self-image of who you are now. Who you were at 6 and who you were at 10 and 14 and all of the days in between are something that has informed your self-image. And you may be informing your self-image as saying, I'm different than that. Or you may be informing your self-image as saying, that affected me and my choices. What you actually want to do is let all of that go. Because if it's part of the fabric of your self-image, you've anchored it. And that's okay. You can relax that anchor and let it go and say, I am who I choose to be. what I was then is right because I dealt with what was around me and I was a dependent child. So now I'm an adult and I choose. And that child's experience gives me the compassion and the wisdom to understand that I need to choose, that I can choose with love, and that I can recognize when other people are putting themselves in pain because that's their comfort zone. And I can have compassion for that and recognize that I can't change their choice. I can only change mine. Everybody you see is a mirror for you. They will show you your choices. They will show you. It's funny because I had to go like, all right, so Nicholas did this whole thing about saying, oh, I have a problem. You have to help me. And I thought, he just wants my attention. And it's okay for me to make a couple of phone calls for him to feel like I took care of him. All right, I could do that. That's like, I'm, small praise, right? And if that makes him feel loved, I'm okay with that. And let go of the outcome because he didn't run to the drugstore. All right, he wanted the attention. That's the part he wanted, so that's okay. And then I made a kind of a decision to say, okay, I need to make sure that I kind of do an attention to him thing kind of once a week or something so that he doesn't have to create a crisis to get my attention because it's not necessary for him to do that. And it's funny because the way I interact with the boys is different right now because Wayne's out of town. So he's feeling neglected because usually when I go into town, I drop in and I didn't. And I thought, oh, so then he had to phone. That's just funny. He had to have a little drama because I didn't drop in to visit them. Okay, recognize that, recognize what's going on. I don't need to make that. I do care that he feels my caring, you know? Um, it doesn't require me dropping into their house because I go south for months at a time and I don't drop into their house and they feel okay. It's just I exert more effort into them feeling loved when I'm out of town, right? So it's the intent. When I'm out of town, my intent is clear. I want them to know that I love them, even though I'm not around them, and they do. I didn't think about that when I didn't drop in to visit the way I usually do. I didn't drop in. I didn't think, oh, I need my intent to be clear that I love them. I just thought, well, I'm not doing that today. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't think about the effect I was having. And so I got a protest. It's an important memo. It's like, okay, I'm important. I'm important and my effect is important. I need to pay attention. Pretty small. I think it was 2 phone calls. Not a high price for me to figure that out. I thought it was kind of cool. I like it when it's a small memo, not a big fussy memo. That's it. Gentle, gentle. So I think the reason you get that torn out of you feeling is you see that, like now that you see this, you're going, I don't want this, I don't want this, I want it gone. And so it's really easy to kind of want to tear it out of you. And so it's allowing yourself to have compassion for the child you were and that this was how you coped and say, okay, I can let this go with love. I choose with love. I choose with love. Breathing in, I choose with love. Flushing out, I choose with love. It's okay. It's okay. And the little girl did the right thing. The little girl did the right thing. The more you have compassion for how she viewed the world and how she experienced the world, the easier it is to find these things so you can let them go. I think, my process is kind of weird um, because I was going, well, okay. Somebody told me about your mother has the eggs inside her when she's a fetus. And I thought, oh, that's big. So I just went off and meditated to say, show me and I see energy. So show me the lines of that. And I got that whole pickled egg metaphor. And then when we worked through that one, I thought there's got to be the dad version of this. And then I got all kinds of information about that. And For me, the primary thing was this authority of resources. So once I figured that out, that it was about this authority of resources, and that's where the big wounding was. There's other stuff, but we'll get to it. Um, then it was like, oh, I could see the rows of school desks and I could feel that. And then I became aware of my jaw and I thought, I must have been grinding my teeth. That's interesting. Um, I certainly knew I wasn't a happy kid in school, right? And that just the intensity of the programming we go through. So all of these things, like if you give yourself a little bit of time and attention, it comes to your awareness. And I got to tell you, a lot of my memos, they come from reading novels. I'll read a novel and I'll see all kinds of patterns and stuff, and I can recognize them and go, there's an important pattern. Um, the minute I recognize the pattern, then I can look at releasing it. Because if I see it in a novel, I don't need something to happen in my life. I can just let it go without having disruption or drama. I don't want the disruption or drama. Enough already. I'm okay with getting it from a novel. It's a lot more entertaining that way. It's a lot easier. All you have to do is let yourself be aware. And if you think, well, I see things in my life I want to change and I'm not quite sure how to do it, all you have to do is pick up the novel that's in front of you and it will be there, because that's how synchronicity works. Whatever it is that you're trying to figure out, the answer is right there for you. It's available. And if you'd rather watch a movie, it's going to be in the movie. Your job is to say, okay, what was this trying to show me? What was the pattern I'm trying to figure out? And I got to tell you, it's not always obvious why it's related to the thing you're trying to change in your life. That's not the important part. What you do is you recognize the pattern and you say, okay, how do I unravel that? And you've got a lot of tools. And if you haven't figured it out from the beginning, as you unravel it, it will come clear, because the pieces that are buried will, become available and you'll recognize it. Keep breathing. Well, okay, you have your old authority. You don't have to breathe if you don't want to. That'll be a little bit blue for you, but that's okay. Your choice. Breathing in, I choose with love. Breathing out, flushing, I choose with love. Flushing through the cells, the energy. So you're tuned to I choose with love. Retuning you, flushing out whatever needs to go. That's it. That's it. Let that good girl authority figure go away now. That has its own energy. Keep up with that breathing. I choose with love. That's it. That's it. So I got to tell you, like, there's dozens of figures that we could have called out. We're out of time, so we're not going to do more of those. But when you go back to do it again, um, there's things that will come to your mind. So it might be specific teachers, it might be a grandmother, it might be some neighbor that yelled at you, and there's going to be people who were in your life that were authorities that had influence, and you can call them specifically. And there can then be also general figures like that, who has the authority of the good girl, because that one, I got to tell you, that's got lots of layers. And so anybody you call out specifically, you're breaking out some element. If you use a general figure like who has the authority of good girl, then you're doing it sort of in bulk. Either way is fine. It's whatever comes to you feels right. All right, so relax to regular breathing. And so remember, we're off for the summer. We have July and August off. We'll be back in September, and Judy, my darling Judy, will send out a note a week ahead of time to remind you we're back at it. And you have a lot of recordings that you can use. You got a year of 2017 and you've got half of 2018. There's tons of stuff. Mackie says love to everybody. Mackie says she's got a friend staying with her that is has a just had a granddaughter, so she's going to go hear about the new adventure. Loved everybody. Take a moment and think about authority of resources and allow yourself to consider I choose. And now you know you can just use that I choose with love any moment, as quick as that. So just put it in place now. I choose with love, cell breathing through all of yourself. Do a couple of breaths and then relax to regular breathing. As you integrate it into your life, what you're doing is taking authority of all of your resources and of your life. And taking authority is what gives you command to command the life you want. You're doing great. I will see you in September. It'll all be a great adventure. So, good night, everybody. Bye bye. Margot says she will go into this new house with I choose rather than rebelling. That's perfect. Alex says that was amazing. And wow, yes, it was amazing, wasn't it? Yeah, we did great. We do great stuff. I love that. And Judy says, thank you. You're welcome. Allison says, good night. Have a great summer. I am going to have a great summer, and I hope you do too. All of you.